Welcome to another in our series of The Law and You, which are particularly interesting conversations this year as we live in the COVID-19 environment. And in just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our guest for today to talk about the impact of the current circumstances on the LGBTIQ community. But before I do that, let me acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, wherever you may be viewing or listening. I think it's vital to remember that we have a very ancient land, and she has been through so much already, and this is another phase, and we pay our deepest respects to the traditional custodians and all their descendants and the leaders now and emerging. But Sam Elkin is our guest today, who is the coordinator of the St Kilda Legal Service LGBTIQ Outreach Service. So Sam, thank you very much. I just needed to check that I got the title absolutely correct. But it's great to see you. Thank you for being part of this.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I'm the coordinator of the LGBTIQ Legal Service, which is part of St Kilda Legal Service in St Kilda.
And I think of all the people that we've spoken to, you've got by far and away the best background.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a beautiful painting from a colleague in the neighbourhood who's an artist. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, you win the prize. What has COVID done to your service?
Well, in the immediate short term, it posed a real challenge for us because we're usually based mainly as a health justice partnership with Thorn Harbour Health, and we also do a community partnership with Transgender Victoria, which is over in Carlton. So the immediate issue was that we were seeing less clients because our partner organisations were, changing the way that they operated. So in the short term, that led to less referrals, but we're definitely starting to see the requests for assistance come back now. I think particularly like any kind of legal issue that relates to home in any way has become a big issue. So where there may have already been issues for a person around family violence within the home, that's obviously going to be exacerbated by the requirements around social isolation at the moment. Many of our community members, unfortunately, have ongoing harassment issues from neighbours. So we've seen an increase in requests for assistance around personal safety intervention orders that relate specifically to neighbourhood related issues, because everybody's at home in the same place together, which is obviously making, existing situations just that bit more stressful. And of course, people have a lot of questions about their relationships if they're not in typical, heterosexual monogamous relationships. What does that mean for LGBTIQ people that fall outside the mainstream? And they're allowed to see their partner, they're not allowed to? And, we were kind of answering these questions on the fly because things have changed so much that, it's hard for me sometimes to advise people on what the right thing to do is because that's changing day to day. So that's been a trick. And I guess the other thing that's coming up that's not COVID related is that the Births, Deaths and Marriages Amendment Bill is coming into law on the 1st of May. So we've had a lot of inquiries around the really exciting changes around gender marker for LGBTIQ people in the trans and gender diverse community in particular. So I've actually become quite busy lately. I thought this was going to be quite a quiet period, but it didn't turn out to be so in the end.
I think that's the experience for very many people, that we anticipated that we might have a bit of time on our hands, but it hasn't shaped up. Just to go back to one of the issues you mentioned around sort of neighbourhood pressure and with everybody being at home and the sort of, I suppose it comes down to a discriminatory legal matter. Is that right? Is that how you'd characterise it?
Sort of. So at the moment, we don't have anti-vilification laws in Victoria that relates to LGBTIQ status like it does for race and religious tolerance under that Act. And that's some law reform that we've been pushing for. We've been involved in some Senate inquiries about that recently. So we hope at some point that this kind of, behaviour in which a person who might be trans or gender diverse or might be a gay male in a regional area, for example, where they're being subjected to homophobia or transphobia by their neighbours, in certain situations, we certainly think that that should be captured by anti-vilification laws, but at the moment they're not. We don't have those protections. Certainly if it was, say, your landlord that was being, homophobic or transphobic towards you, then that would be covered by anti-discrimination law. And certainly if you fear for your safety, you could potentially get a personal safety intervention order, and it might also include, criminal offending that the police could deal with. But there's a little bit of a gap there in the law, in the legal protections for LGBTIQ people at the moment, because of the lack of anti-vilification laws extending to our community and people with disabilities and women, for example. So we're hoping to see in 2020 or 2021 the laws being extended to us.
Yes, I think that's also a really widespread experience, is that, if there was a slight crack before, it's become a bit of a chasm now because of the pressure that everybody's under. But you mentioned earlier, Sam, the new legislation, which is a much anticipated arrival on May the 1st. But for Law Week, which is upon us, you're holding the second in a series of events that you've had during Law Weeks. Well, last year and this year. Last year was phenomenal, and it was the Change Your ID Day, which was an amazing opportunity for people to sort of one-stop shop changing their identity on a number of different bureaucratic systems. How can you do that this year?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of an experiment. I mean, we were planning on doing another, face-to-face kind of stall situation at the Kathleen Syme Library. So unfortunately, we've had to put that off this year. But we're going to have representatives from births, deaths and marriages, from the legal team, just explain what the changes are and what it means for people. And we're going to have Brenda Appleton, who's from Transgender Victoria, very experienced advocate, and has been, pushing for these legal changes for over 20 years now. So it'll be really wonderful to hear from her just about that journey and what it means for her. And we're also going to have Felicity Marlowe, who is involved with Rainbow Families Victoria and is a parent of a non-binary child. So we'll bring that experience of what it means for her and helping her young person navigate the huge world of bureaucracy and identity as they finish high school and start entering the workforce and so on. So it's just going to be, I guess, a combination of information sharing so that people understand what the new laws are and how they can change their ID if they want to. And also a bit of a celebration, because this has been, like I say, like a 30-year campaign. And we really want to honour that hard work that's been done and actually take the time to, have a cup of tea together online and celebrate this and hear from some of the people that have fought for these changes.
Well, I suppose the silver lining in that, Sam, is that with face-to-face events, not everyone can be there, but with an online opportunity like this, maybe more people can be part of it and get any insight from all the people that you've mentioned as to their experience, and particularly their experience in Victoria, which I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and we're going to hopefully record it as well so that people can listen to it later if they were, at school at the time or whatever it might be. And I guess we're kind of learning on the fly, as I'm sure every other organisation is at the moment, about how to deliver stuff online. And we might find that some stuff is actually way more valuable doing it online than face-to-face as well, or that we do an online session and a face-to-face session so that we can assist people that are living, in regional or remote areas, or who might have complex health issues, which means that they can't easily leave the house, or they might be immunocompromised, so might not want to enter a room of 40 people for quite valid reasons. So yeah, we're learning, and I think we're getting a lot of insight into the lived experience of a lot of vulnerable people, which is an eye-opener and helpful for a community lawyer that, like me, that does a lot of that work but doesn't necessarily obviously have heaps of insight until now.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely nailed the expansion in my understanding too. So I think it's been incredibly useful for all of us to live a different life and to understand what the pressures are, and even more particularly for your community. It comes with all sorts of other challenges, which you are so well prepared to address. But we look forward very much to the webinar. It's on Monday, the 18th of May, and it's between 1 and 2. And you do need to register if you want to attend. But I really hope that you're in a position to turn it around and make it more publicly available afterwards, because I think a huge number of people will get value out of it. Sam, thank you so much for the work that you do, and for your Law Week contribution, both in terms of the webinar and for this chat.
Great. Thanks so much. It's been
good
fun.
to talk to you. Sam Elkin, who is the lawyer with the LGBTIQ Outreach Service through the St Kilda Legal Service.